Let's go back 2 slides. Click there. Oh, that's funny. Is that gonna, oh, that's good. Okay, can everyone at home see the presentation? Yes, okay, and everyone in the room can see the presentation.
Great.
Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here. Thanks for inviting us to speak today. I'm Renu Bostwick. I'll be providing a bit of an introduction to Mothers Out Front. For a little background on myself, I've been a Bedford resident for 26 years. I've raised both my daughters here and can't believe how old they are now. And I love this little town, just as you all do. I'm a software engineer working full-time, but I've spent every waking moment outside of work immersed in combating climate change for the past 8 years, ever since I realized that my own personal changes are not enough to ensure that my children and yours aren't left with climate chaos. Yikes, I can't get my, let me try to find it again. Sorry, 1 second. All right. Can't advance it, Dawn. Is it? I did.
You clicked on it.
I clicked on it. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Mothers Out Front is a national grassroots climate justice organization. This is what our website looks like. And if you'd like to check it out, it's simply mothersoutfront.org. We are a nonpartisan 501c3. So it might be easy for Rotary to partner with us. Mothers Out Front's mission is to build our power as mothers, grandmothers, caregivers, and others to ensure a livable climate for all children. We are building a movement that is a force for positive change. The center photo that you see here was taken right here in Bedford by the Patriot statue as we all rallied together in November before we went off to National Grid headquarters in Waltham to ask for change. Mothers Out Front's vision is a swift, complete, and equitable transition to a clean energy future for everyone. And the key words are equitable, everyone. The way Mothers Out Front works towards this future is by organizing together. First, we organize locally in our towns. Then we organize our chapters together in the state. And recently, we've started organizing our states together nationally. We try to make it easy for people to join their voices together to insist on the changes that our children need. One important part of Mothers Out Front's work is recognizing racism. We recognize that the climate crisis is felt first and felt worst by those who contribute to it the least. And we recognize that climate change is intricately linked with racial injustice. Hop Hopkins from the Sierra Club summed it up nicely. You can't have climate change without sacrifice zones, and you can't have sacrifice zones without disposable people, and you can't have disposable people without racism. Having an equitable transition away from fossil fuels means centering both racial and environmental justice. When people think about climate change and environmental injustice, it's really easy to feel discouraged. It can feel like we're alone worrying about this problem and that we don't have the power to fix it. But when we start working together as part of a movement, we can begin to tip the scales. The vast majority of Americans believe climate change is real, and they think we should be doing more to stop it. When we join with others, when we build our power, laws get passed, regulations get enforced, and local community projects get launched. Not used to all this technology and all at once. Mothers Out Front started 9 years ago when two mothers in Massachusetts, Kelsey Worth and Vanessa Rule, noticed that mothers were largely absent from the climate movement. They started organizing other mothers in their community to address climate issues at the local and state level. The movement spread to more towns across Massachusetts and then spread to more states. Today, we're a national grassroots movement with roughly 37,000 supporters across the country. We are strongest here in Massachusetts, where we started. And here in Massachusetts, we have about 13,000 supporters. Our Bedford chapter is one of 22 chapters in the state. And we started in 2015, so it's been a while. And we have 470 supporters. And several of you who have joined in our actions are counted among those 470, just so you know. How do we build this grassroots movement for transformational change? We build relationships with people, especially one-to-one, but also with other organizations like we're doing here today with you all. We build our sense of community with regular Mothers Out Front meetings, mostly on Zoom recently. We hold educational events and public forums. I hope many of you came to the composting fair we had at the library earlier this year, and perhaps you attended the public forum a couple of years ago where we had sustainability directors from other towns who came and talked to us about their work, and it was eye-opening. We contact decision makers. Perhaps you joined in on letters to the select board about hiring a sustainability director for Bedford. Or perhaps you have already signed our composting petition for town-wide curbside composting that we'll be delivering to the select board in a few weeks. I'll share more on that later. And the QR code that's standing up on the table over there, if you scan it, it'll take you straight to the petition if you want to sign it. We share our stories because that's how we can trust each other and work effectively together for the huge transformational changes needed. We come together in rallies and actions. The rallies have mostly been statewide. Locally, we just show up together when important things are being discussed at the select board or at town meeting. For the last year, the statewide Mothers Out Front campaign has been focused on clean heat, clean air. One of the pieces that has been advocating for climate legislation at the state level. The state campaign would let us all know what was happening and what we should do next. There were huge numbers of people who would take 10 minutes to leave a voicemail many times over the month to Governor Baker, or to take 10 minutes to email or tweet to our own rep, Ken Gordon, or to Senator Mike Barrett, or to Governor Baker himself. We had easy to use scripts and templates that make it easy for busy mothers and everyone to speak up for their children's future. And we are being heard. This is a huge game-changing win. Even though this is a game-changing bill, just a caution that it's still not enough, given the pace of accelerating climate change. All the news from climate scientists are more and more pessimistic as the effects of climate change have a spiraling effect and very bad feedback loops that make it harder every day to combat. We can celebrate this great climate bill with Massachusetts leading the way, but we can't stop here. Here are some of the highlights of this amazing climate bill for Massachusetts. There are clean energy investments in offshore wind, in the electric grid, in carbon-free energy, improvements in energy storage, and rules about solar. It declares that biomass is not a renewable resource. For transportation, it bans the sale of all new gas-powered vehicles in 2035. That's huge. To get there, to get ready for that huge transformation, the bill also increases electric vehicle rebates. It adds more EV chargers. It expands access to electric vehicles to those who can afford it less. It also greens our public transit. Equity is a big part of this bill. The bill's improvements in fossil fuel use for buildings are huge. It incentivizes electric appliances. It targets large buildings and schools. It addresses the future of natural gas in our utilities. But the biggest game-changing win is that it allows 10 cities and towns to pilot a ban of fossil fuels in new construction and renovations. Those 10 cities and towns have already passed home rule petitions for this, but it didn't fit with current state building codes. So this bill allows them to move forward as a pilot program. The most energizing to me was to note that 8 out of 10 of those cities and towns have Mothers Out Front chapters. There are only 22 chapters in Massachusetts, but 8 of them did these home rule petitions. The grassroots of mothers speaking up for the changes that our children need is making a difference. So the Bedford chapter of Mothers Out Front has been speaking up for change in Bedford in order to keep Bedford safe and healthy for years to come. We know that we need to get decision makers to act swiftly and fairly, building up our community while investing for the changes needed. So our chapter has been focusing on initiatives in 2 different areas over the years: net zero for buildings and waste reduction for food waste. Net zero means that the building's energy, which is heating and cooling and electricity, ideally comes from all renewable sources. Though until we can finally get there, we can offset our current fossil fuel to have a net zero emissions balance. It's all about reducing in order to eliminate all fossil fuels used in our town's buildings, which are a potent driver of climate change. Waste reduction is important because the trash we burn or send to landfills is another source of climate warming greenhouse gas emissions that's driving the sad future in front of our children. Food waste, when burned in incinerators, puts that organic carbon material into the air, harming our atmosphere. Food waste, when sent to landfills, causes methane to be released into the atmosphere, which warms the planet 80 times faster than carbon dioxide. We are running out of space in Massachusetts in our incinerators, which means that our trash is being trucked to states outside Massachusetts for landfills. And that in itself is an environmental justice horribleness. You know, we should not be sending our waste to other communities. So any food waste we can send back to Earth through composting prevents it from getting into the atmosphere, helps create soil that absorbs more carbon from the air, and helps with water retention as droughts get worse. So our waste reduction initiatives have focused on getting food waste into the soil rather than the air. So here are a few more specifics about what we focused on in Bedford. For net zero, we started in 2015 advocating for community choice aggregation, which is a group buying contract that the town negotiates for electricity, and wanting to have it have a 100% renewable option. It took 4 years before that became a reality. And the default is an extra 5% of renewable electricity in the contract back then. And everyone had the option of paying extra and opting up to 100%. And one of these QR codes here is the CCA website. If you want to opt up for your own household, you can still do it to 100% renewables. And it's cheaper than the regular electricity rate at the moment. In 2017, we spearheaded getting approval for funding for a net zero plan for buildings for Bedford. In 2018, our members supported the consultants by being on advisory councils and creating the net zero plan. Rather than waiting for the net zero plan to become reality, we got started in promoting home energy assessments in 2018, since insulation and air sealing brings comfort and carbon emissions reductions. If you were around then, you might remember another presentation we did for the Rotary back then about that program. In 2019, the net zero plan was adopted by Bedford Select Board. Although we have a plan, emissions will only get reduced if we start implementing the suggestions in the plan. The first 2 steps by the plan are to hire a sustainability director and to increase the amount of renewables in our default CCA for electricity. Last year, when the CCA contract was up for renewal, 102 people signed a letter on very short notice, 2 weeks, we had 2 weeks notice, asking our select board to make 100% renewables be the default for everyone. And to have an opt-down option so that if people need to, have a more affordable option, they can opt down. But instead of doing that, the select board chose to go from the plus 5% default that we already had to plus 20%. So it was a, modest win, but, still our advocacy helped move the needle in the right direction. There's still an opt-up option. So those who want to can pay a little bit extra, the cost of a pizza every month, to get fully renewables in their home. Our most recent campaign is to get a sustainability director added to the town staff, and that was successful. A new sustainability manager position was approved, though at a lower salary band than the director. And this is thanks to the town manager, Sarah Stanton, and 3 out of 5 of the select board members who stayed firm and kept it in our budget. It was touch and go, but lots of your emails and showing up at select board meetings and showing up at finance committee meetings helped move the needle again in the right direction for our children's future. So waste reduction is the other part of what we work on. We started out advocating in 2018 for diverting food waste from the trash in the schools. This initiative did not make it very far until this year when the state banned food waste from the trash for larger institutions. So now the kitchens at JGMS and BHS are composting, and they have a plan to start composting in the cafeteria in the fall. This is an effort that could use a lot of help from all of us. During COVID, we focused on promoting individual households signing up for curbside residential composting. Our efforts doubled the number of participants until we reached the 300 participants mark, which reduced the pickup cost for everyone. But this is, again, people who can afford to pay it, paying extra to do the right thing. Currently, we're advocating for our town to provide curbside food waste pickup for composting for everyone, just as they provide trash and recycling pickup to everyone equally. Although 300 people diverting their food waste from trash by paying extra for it is commendable, the emissions saved in collective action with 9,000 households diverting their food waste would be so much better for our children's future climate, and would allow those who are unable to compost in their backyard or who cannot afford to pay that little extra every month to also compost. What you see in blue are what we are currently focused on, and both of these areas would be a great way for Mothers Out Front and the Rotary to collaborate. And it could very easily involve the youth, which I know is one of your focuses for the year. So this is our composting petition. And it's the same for those in the room. It's the same one that's sitting in the plastic sleeve over there. If you hold your phone up to it, it'll take you right to it. And we are trying to collect 300 signatures, and we're going to be presenting it to the select board in early September. And it is asking for curbside composting for everyone. So we do this work for the young people we love. Governor Jay Inslee from Washington, he said, "We are the first generation to feel the sting of climate change, and we are the last generation that can do something about it." Personally, I do this work for my sweet kiddos who are now 23 and 19. The photo on the right is one of my favorite photos of my children. And the photo on the left is another member, Janet Power's favorite photo of her children. I'm sure you have some favorite photos of the children in your life that make your heart swell. When we look at these photos, we're reminded that we cannot in good conscience sit by and do nothing while the future becomes more and more chaotic for them. We can and must do all that we can to turn the slow motion train wreck around, and together we can do that for the people we love. So this is my last slide. I wanted to open it up for questions and brainstorming ways that Bedford Mothers Out Front and Bedford Rotary can work together this coming year. I put a couple of possibilities as starting point. In the area of net zero, one recommendation of the net zero plan was to have a building energy use disclosure for businesses. The Energy and Sustainability Committee is working on this right now. the Rotary could be a big help in getting businesses on board and helping to spread the good intentions, since we can only reduce climate changing emissions if we are measuring and paying attention to them. Could Rotary and maybe the school business club, is it called DECA? Could they help with this? In the area of waste reduction, getting food waste diversion happening well and educating the school population about it is another avenue for collaboration that Rotary could help with. Could Rotary and the school environmental club, could they help with this? What do you all think? I open it up and happy to take any questions. Yes, Judy.
I'm trying to change it to the same channel.
I'm gonna use the TV.
Okay, as far as the efficiency go, I think the most efficient thing would be to send a given link to our newsletter every day, right there. So that will include people who aren't here today, and people who are comfortable clicking on the phone. As far as the school, we haven't voted that. Sounds like a good project for them.
All right, can anyone hear what Judy said? Did my experiment work? Oh, no. Oh, well. All right, well, thanks for being my. Okay, so, Renu, ask a question.
Sure. Is this the mic?
That's the microphone, yeah. I
But
can
leaving
move
it right
around
there
with
is
it.
fine, right?
Yeah, leaving it right there is fine, yeah.
So what Judy said was that we should share the link via the Rotary newsletter, and that there's a Rotary club, what was it called? Interact Club in the high school, right? That could help with some of these initiatives. Yeah. I think that's great, yeah. What do they work on
Just
now?
a comment if I may, and that is, that was an excellent presentation, Randy. It was absolutely
you.
superb. Will your slides be available to us?
Sure, I can make them available.
Thank you.
Okay, as far as what they're working on now, somebody else is in.
Yeah, I don't know what the Interact Club is doing. Is the microphone working? You just want to stand over there?
Yeah,
You can pass this around.
I need a fake Rotary.
Yes, my concern is that I really like the idea of the Interact Club getting involved. And I just learned today that Bedford TV is starting with their new classes at Bedford TV, and they're starting on the 21st of September. And well, for both elementary school and middle school. But part of their job as taking the classes there, they get community service credit for taking the class. But the reason they get community service credit is that they actually do a production. And they could pick up on some of the themes from others out front. So perhaps there could be an opportunity for you to work with Brian, or work with me, or work with whoever you want to get the students involved with promoting the stuff. The whole recycling program at Bedford High School started with 2 high school kids. They were the ones that got them to buy the recycle bins and all that. So when you shift it, say, yeah, I really like the idea of mothers out front. That's terrific. But bring your kids along and help them to understand how they can get involved. That's where the real action begins, because it's their future they're working on. Thank you.
Just a question about clothing, because now they're besides other recyclable food, and they're asking about how about clothing, because I noticed they're starting to collect those too.
Yes, the high school has a textile bin, and I know the high school gets money from the donations of that textile bin. And it's not just usable clothing, it's clean rags of any sort, including rugs, any kind of textile material, even pillows, used pillows, because all of that textile material, if you burn it or put it in a landfill, it can actually be repurposed, and they use it for all sorts of other things. Maybe not new pillows, but other things. Yeah. I hadn't heard that. For mattresses, I think it is, but I don't, textiles also. Oh, that's good news. It's illegal to put textiles into the trash. Is that just in Massachusetts, I guess? Yeah.
It'd be great to have one of the high school students write a little thing about their recycling. They didn't have in high school for them.
Mhm.
to start using, first they ever heard about it.
And I think there is maybe another one in one of the other schools, but I can't remember now which one it is.
Keep the kids right.
Yeah. Dawn.
So you mentioned in your slides that we could support the composting at the schools. How do you envision citizens helping the schools?
So they're starting with the high school and middle school, and all the neighboring towns that have actually implemented composting in schools find that the older kids are the least willing to do it. And so it takes a lot of volunteers to be there right at the trash can to say no, yes, no, yes, no. And that's also true in the younger schools, but in the younger schools, a lot of times the kids are enthusiastic about it. And so you can get programs going where the kids step up and do that yes, no at the trash volunteering. And, you know, we've tried to do this in our church too. And every time we think that signs are enough, it's never enough. Someone has to stand there and go, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Otherwise you end up picking through the trash and, you know, sorting through it later. And so in the high school, I think a lot of volunteers would be needed, especially at the beginning, to get it started until it becomes a cultural, you know, ingrown thing where the younger kids are coming through the schools, and for them, it would be second nature.
Yes, we did.
Mm. Breakfast with Santa has experience with this.
Yeah, so Breakfast with Santa is our not right. It's
Winter breakfast.
yeah. So same sort of time of year in early December, we'll have a big fundraiser. It's a big pancake breakfast. And we had a group of Girl Scouts who came to us and said they wanted to work on helping with recycling and composting. And so they were at the bins and they helped. It was fabulous, right? Can you imagine when your kids were little to walk up there and you've got one in arms and one in the stroller and you want to go do these other activities, and the Girl Scouts were helping them to get it in the right bins. And I think that they probably kind of figured out how much liquid waste they had, how much solid waste. I think they did it for, at least for a couple of our fundraisers. And actually, if we're getting our committee together, we should think about inviting some Girl Scouts or some other groups to help us with that, because it's not just what we do every day. Sometimes we feel like, oh, when we go out in public or to a party, oh, we can use disposable plates, we can use this, we can use that. So I guess kind of resetting our needle, the dial a little bit in all of these things. And you kind of reacted to the fact that textiles are now illegal to put in trash. Wouldn't it be wonderful if food waste was illegal to put in trash?
It is in Vermont.
Right? Wouldn't it be nice if we could kind of move that dial too? I mean, I know I do backyard composting and the bin never fills up. Never fills up. And I look at these big trash barrels and I say, the pennies don't need them, but other people do. And I think the more we can help people to understand how it makes a difference. And yeah, well, I think you were kind of tuned into the DECA Club, and my brain went to something you had told me. So I'm wearing my Mother's Out Front shirt today. So Renu took me, guided me to the State House. We went to a little bit of
It was 2 years ago, I think, with the last climate bill, probably.
Really to make a stand about that. And I guess, kind of thinking about how we can all make a difference. I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit about, it's about recycling and composting. And, oh, you were saying the DECA Club. And I think the reason I connected with that is because I think you told me that food waste and other waste is the town pays for by the pound. And the more we can keep out of the town bins, the more we save our town money, right? We want to keep our budgets for these things down and we can all make a difference.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so keep doing what you're doing. Absolutely. And you're right, young people can totally help with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I hope more and more people will start making the sea change of like cultural shifts that we need. Oh, it's 1:30.
It's 1:30, so I'm gonna end the meeting officially, but if anybody still has questions, you can feel free to hang on and ask them, but anybody who needs to leave is most certainly welcome to, so. Ring this out. Thank you so much, Tarinu, and all our mothers out front guests, including our resident mothers out front guest, Christine Finney, for joining us. What's that? Oh, stop the recording. I need Paula here to like, oh, stop.